Hello VC. Thought I'd come back and make another video for your entertainment while everybody is isolating due to the coronavirus situation. So I figured what I would do is I'll follow up with another oldies video, and this video is titled Records That Were Recorded When You Were Still in Diapers. Now some of you might have been past the diaper stage when these records were recorded. So if that's the case, you might be in diapers right now. But we won't go into that any further. And for those of you who are into the psych and the garage going, oh geez, this is not going to be another oldies video. That sucks. I think I'll go to one of those swearing parrots video. Fine, go to a swearing parrots video. But just remember, some of these artists are the foundation of modern music that we're listening to today, even though the stuff came from the 50s and 60s. So I thought, let's dwell a little bit more into the oldies. But first, just a quick update. So here, everything is the same. All the businesses are closed, the stores are closed, everything. The only thing open is the grocery store. Now, some of the grocery stores in our area have started taking the temperature of their customers before they go into the store to make sure they don't have a fever. I certainly hope they're not using a rectal thermometer to take their temperature. I mean, you got all your customers lined up with their shopping carts, and as each one enters the store, you say, pull them down and bend over. That's not cricket. But let's not dwell on that. Let's get into the records. So I'm just going to show a whole bunch of oldie records, and I'm going to mix up a little bit. I'm going to have a little bit of jazz in here this time. My last video didn't really have much jazz. And I have to say this time too though, I do have a few reissues, like modern reissues, because the original pressings cost an arm and a leg, and I can't afford an arm, never mind an arm and a leg. So let's get right into it right now. And we're going to start off, and I should say too that most of these pressings will be Canadian pressings. There'll be a few American pressings, and so labels will differ between the States and Canada sometimes, and sometimes even the jacket differs. Also, I'll give a year. The year is just an approximation, so don't freak out if I'm off by 1 or 2 years, something like that. They're old records, that's pretty much it. So, I try to keep it to one record per artist, and we're going to start off actually with a jazz album, 1955. This is the first of my reissues. This is one of those albums that if you want an original pressing, you better be rich. I'm not rich. This album was originally released in 1956, I believe.
I called a train, I met a dame. She was a hefty and a real gone dame. She was pretty from New York City, and we trucked on down that old fair lane with a heave and a hoe. Well, I just couldn't let it go. Get along, sweet little woman, get along. Better be a...
This is a modern reissue. Now, I did see an original of this at the local flea market, maybe about 8-9 years ago. The vendor was asking $500 for the record. A colleague of mine who I used to see there every Sunday desperately wanted that record, and he started into negotiations. I didn't hang around, but he did end up buying the record, but I believe he got it for considerably less than $500. The next one, 1956, once again, a jazz album. I'm a big fan of Ramsey Lewis, especially from around 60 to 65, when he sort of had that pop jazz sound to his music. I can remember I have on DVD the Shindig and Hullabaloo series, and on Hullabaloo they had Hullabaloo Go-Go, which is usually the band of the week who was the most upbeat band would play the go-go with go-go dancers. And it was the Ramsey Lewis trio playing the go-go, and they thought, well, that's a little bit unusual that to see a jazz band performing with go-go dancers all around them. That's pretty much how upbeat their music was. This next one, this is a Canadian pressing. It is an original, far as I know, and I think this is 1956.
Blue Monday, how I hate Blue Monday. Got to work like a slave all day. Here come Tuesday, oh Tuesday. I'm so tired, got no time to play. Here come
Once again, this jacket here is almost like a heavy paper as opposed to the cardboard type. And the inner sleeve, I don't know if it's original or not, but the inner sleeve here is almost like onion paper. So that would have been a Canadian pressing from about 1956. Here's one I think is from around 1957, and this is an original pressing.
I go out walking after midnight, out in the moonlight, just like we used to do. I'm always walking after midnight, searching for you. I walk for miles along the highway.
I think that Walking After Midnight was a very innovative sound for the time. That sort of country artist with a touch of rock and roll in it. The Sex album came out in 1958. This is a reissue. Again, this is one of the records. If you want to buy an original, it's going to cost you a fortune. Just a generic label. Records like this, I never ever tried to go after the originals because the money they are asking for was just insane. I think, again, we have another jazz record, and this is 1958. Capital pressing, and you can see the logo is off to the left hand side rather than at the top, which became common in the 60s. These jazz albums that I've been showing, they came from the local flea market. When I first started going to that local flea market, I guess that must have been close to 15 years ago, there are certain genres of music that the vendors weren't too keen on, and jazz was one of them. So typically any album like this top $1. They couldn't wait to get rid of them. So I picked up a lot of jazz albums for $1. I figured for $1, just give them a listen and see what I like. I tended to focus a lot on the 6i Columbia label if I could find them. But so I picked up a lot, though I'm not a really big jazz fan. This next one is 1957. It's a reissue, and this, I believe, it was a Record Store Day reissue. I'm not sure. I'm going back quite a few years ago, I think, when Record Store Day was just starting out. At the time, I walked in the store, there was only one copy left up on the wall. It said Record Store Day. It was priced at $10. So I said, for $10, why not?
Gonna tell and Mary by Uncle John. He claimed he had the music, but he had a lot of fun. Oh, baby, yeah, baby, woo, baby, having me some fun tonight, yeah. Well, low toss down the sheet, be a speech guy, everything that Uncle John need. Oh, baby, yeah, baby.
Nice colored vinyl on that one. This one I would see from time to time at the flea market, and it wasn't priced sort of outrageous. It was, you know, they were asking maybe like $40 for something, but they were always in terrible shape, so never bothered to pick it up. Just happy with the reissue. I think this one here is 1957, I think. I might be wrong on this one. This is a Liberty pressing.
Oh, well, come on, everybody, let's get together tonight. I got some money in my jeans and I'm really gonna spend it right. Well, I've been doing my homework all the week long, and now the house is empty and my folks are gone.
That's a pretty modern looking Liberty label. I'm sure this one got pressed sometime in the 60s. Nice group. I'm going to show a group that was, this first record came out in 1957, but I'm going to show one by them as well that came out in 1959, because that's the one that had their big hit. The band is the Diamonds. This is their first album, 1957. I'm not sure. These are Canadian presses probably, and they're on the Mercury label. But they had a big hit around 1959, I think it is. It was called The Stroll.
Come, let's stroll across the floor. Come, let's stroll across the floor.
This is, I think it's Mercury Wing. I'm not exactly sure. The Stroll is one of my favorite old-time, oldie type records, songs. This one is 1959.
Hey, mama, don't you treat me wrong. Come and love you, daddy, all night long, all right now. Hey, hey, all right.
1959.
I've got a gal in Ruby, is the name. Ruby, baby. She don't love me, but I love her just the same. Whoa, give me loving, honey too. I'm gonna give it all to you. Ruby, when can you be mine?
1959.
If you see me coming, baby, lift your window high. If you see me coming, lift your window high. And if you see me going, hang your head and cry. You got a will.
Here's a singer I really like, really smooth voice. It's a record from 1959.
Higher than the highest mountain, and deeper than the deepest sea. That's how I will love you, oh darling, endlessly.
He did a record with Diane Washington. I think it's sometime around 1962, I'm guessing there. Very good album. If you ever see it, it's worth picking up. This album, I believe, was originally recorded in 1959. I have a reissue, probably from the late 70s. Be nice to have a 6-eye copy. Here's an album released in 1960.
My baby whispers in my ear, sweet nothing. He knows the things I like to hear, sweet nothing. Things he wouldn't tell nobody else. Secret, baby, I'll keep you to yourself.
It's interesting, Wanda Jackson and Brenda Lee were somewhat similar. That young female artist starting out in the very late 50s, both had sort of a rockabilly sound to it. And in the case of Brenda Lee, I have her first 7 albums, and I paid $2 for each of them. When it came to Wanda Jackson, I wanted her first 3 albums, and man, you gotta pay up for those if you want one in good shape. Holy cow. Also, one of the big hits for Brenda Lee, of course, is Rock Around the Christmas Tree, I think it is. And Rockin' Around, yeah, Christmas Tree. That came out, I believe the single came out in 1958. So I always thought this album came out in 58 as well, because it has Rock Around the Christmas Tree. But it's not. Apparently this, I think, came out like 1964, the album. Quite a few years after the single. A record from 1960.
Well, come on now, baby, let's rock. Well, come on now, baby, let's rock. Well, come on now, baby, let's get it together. Let's drive the blues in my soul. Kick out your shoes, come on now, baby, we're rocking the blues. You're a real chicken when you feel the floor, but when you hear that ball, man, you go. Well, come on now, baby, let's rock.
Quality was a label for Canada, where they did a lot of the pressings for major labels in the States. Late 50s, very early 60s, you would see that Quality label quite often. This one here, let me see here. This is actually, I think, 1962.
How much mercy, baby? How much mercy, baby? I know I've done you wrong. How much mercy, baby? How much mercy, baby? I know I've done you wrong. But I'm reaping all the sorrow. Take me back where I belong. I've been a good for nothing. I've lied, cheated too.
Here's one. I actually don't have a date on this one. Probably say 1960 to 62 maybe. I'm just guessing on the date, but I'm also guessing it's a fairly old record.
Because the point of a gun was the only law that liberty understood. When it came to shooting straight and fast, he was mighty good. From out of the east, a stranger came, a law book in his hand. Oh man.
That's the United Artists label. One artist that I really intended to collect, and his records aren't super duper expensive for the original pressings. I used to see him maybe around $40 or so, and I always intended to collect them. But then one day I was at a vinyl show, maybe 4 years ago, and there was this vendor there, and he was selling brand new reissues of groups from the 50s and early 60s. He had a ton of stuff there, and everything was priced at $12 per record. So the artist I was trying to get at the time, I had no originals, was Bo Diddley, and he had all the Bo Diddley stuff there. So I thought for $12 I might as well just grab them. And so here's one here. I think this one was originally released in 1960. Of course, this is a reissue that I picked up at the vinyl show.
I'm a road runner, honey, and you can't keep up with me. I'm a road runner, honey, and you can't keep up with me.
From what I heard, some vendors weren't too keen on that person being there selling all those records for $12 a piece. He certainly grabbed a lot of business that day, sold a lot of records. I don't really know what kind of margins he had when you're selling brand new vinyl at $12 a copy. Couldn't have been making very much money. Just because we're on the oldies theme, I just wanted to show you this. I think I showed this once before, but I'm just going to go very quickly through this. And let me just get this organized here. If you're ever interested in oldies, this might be a good collection to pick up. I've picked these up, and they're all priced pretty cheap. In retail stores that sell vintage used records, they're usually priced between $5 and $7 each for a very clean copy, and they're nice to have. The series is supposed to be radio broadcasts with the commercials still left in. There's one from each year, starting in 1955. A couple of songs on this one is Maybelline from Chuck Berry, Ain't That a Shame from Fats Domino, what I just showed there. (1956) Roll Over by Beethoven is on this one, Chuck Berry. Tutti Frutti by Little Richie is on this one. (1957) This has Susie Q by Dale Hawkins, which we just saw, and Happy Happy Birthday Baby by Tune Weavers. It's another great hit. (1958) We got here Rock and Roll Music, Chuck Berry. Chantilly Lace by the Big Bopper, which I showed in my previous video. (1959) Charlie Brown by the Coasters, which is a song I actually hate, and 16 Candles by the Crest. I think each record is from a different DJ on a different radio station in a different city. 1960, Alley Oop by the Hollywood, what's that, Argyles? Stay by Maurice Williams, which I showed in my previous video. Finger Poppin' Time by Hank Ballard. That's someone I don't have any records by. I'd like to pick up some records by Hank Ballard. 1961. So here we have, actually notice, Nadine by Chuck Berry. Blue Moon by the Marcells. And on the back of each one, information on the artists that are on the record, as well as the DJ who's on the record. And as I mentioned, the commercials are still in the broadcast there. 1962, Peppermint Twist by Joey D. Soldier Boy by the Shirelles. Johnny Angel by Shelley Fabre, who I showed in my last video. 63, Twist and Shout, the Isley Brothers. Baby It's You by the Shirelles. It's My Party by Leslie Gore. Some of the ones on this one. I think Louie Louie by Kingsman was on that one. 1964. So you got the Harlem Shuffle by Bob and Earl. Suspicion by Terry Stafford. Nitty Gritty by Shirley Ellis. That's an artist I like, Shirley Ellis. 1965. Wooly Bully by Sam and the Sham. The In Crowd by Ramsey Lewis, which I showed you in my last video. Eve of Destruction by Barry McGuire. Some of the ones on this one. 1966. So we got Wipeout by the Safaris. Hanky Panky by Tommy James. See You in September by the Happenings. Some of the songs on that one. 1967. Judy in Disguise. John Fred and his Playboy Band. A Little Bit of Soul, Music Explosion. Incense and Peppermints, Strawberry Alarm Clock. I'm starting to get a little bit psyched there. 1968. Magic Carpet Ride by Steppenwolf. Spooky Classics 4. And Heard It Through the Grapevine, Marvin Gaye. Some of the songs there. And finally, 1969. Tequila by the Champs. My Boyfriend's Back by the Angels. The Israelites, Desmond Decker. Some of the ones I recognize there. So those are good records if you're into oldies, and they're cheap. And I didn't have too much difficulty finding, except I think 1968 was a tough one to find. So, as always, thank you for watching. Have a great day. And remember to stay away from those grocery stores that are taking the temperatures of their customers.